Go
Hey,
ahead.
Don, how you doing?
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Now that Z has made his decision to move on, could you just maybe explain the role you had hoped he might be able to play for you guys?
Well, I want to make sure it's abundantly clear that we had multiple discussions with Zdeno and Matt Cater. Very appreciative of all the dialogue and both sides being honest in terms of where they were. We had certainly offered a contract to Zdeno months ago, and he indicated he wanted time to continue to work through again where he felt he was at, where the league was at, the return to play protocols, and what the role that we were describing and hoping to integrate him into with our hockey club as we saw it, and what our internal plans and discussions were moving forward. And make no mistake about it, that did include looking to integrate some of the younger players that have had an opportunity to develop in our system, and us trying to see whether or not they were capable of handling minutes and in situations that they had not been exposed to. So we described it as an integrated role, and just didn't make a categorical promise that he would have the exact same role he had in certainly in his 14 in a historic career with the Boston Bruins. And I'm very sad. It's unrewarding in an aspect of the job to see a player like that choose to leave.
And obviously, you guys still have some good leaders on that roster there. But what's the concern of a fallout in the room when such a towering figure departs like that?
Well, it's a little bit to be determined. I do believe we have a strong leadership core still in place, and we have other players that would like to assume a larger responsibility in that role on and off the ice, and they have to grow into that. You have to. That's a learned. That's not a born-in ability, in my opinion. And we're going to allow for some of that latitude, but we have a lot of strong guys that are looking to continue the success that they've previously had, pass it on to the next cast of players that hope to become core and integral parts of this hockey club. And we'll move forward. A player like Craig Smith coming from another organization, things that he can bring to the table that hopefully our club continue to improve upon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. We'll go next to Matt Porter and then Kevin Dupont. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay. Hey, Don. Do you expect to have a captain this year?
Yes, we expect to have a captain. We're going to allow this, some time to breathe for Zdeno and his decision. We'll make a decision moving forward. I think it's an obvious decision and one that we'll make in a respectful manner at an appropriate time. But I think it's important to allow this moment, as raw as it is, to let it play out for the time being as we get on the doorstep of opening camp. But we will address that in the right and appropriate manner.
And then obviously, in figuring out where, how these holes get filled, Zdeno's minutes, 20 minutes, pretty hard minutes, specifically end of game stuff. Who do you feel can step up into that role to play those really important minutes, close games, where Zdeno, is still very effective?
Yeah, I mean, we do have to spread those minutes around in situations, as I described earlier, that some other players have not been exposed to. Whether or not they're capable of, I certainly believe that they would like to be in those situations and aspire to be in those situations. So I think we're going to do it by committee and allow some of these guys to a little bit of trial and error and potentially fail as a result of it, but also succeed as a result of it and not look over their shoulder in any way, shape, or form, because they have to gain that experience. I mean, you're not going to move forward in your career if you're not put in those situations. And sometimes you fall flat, and other times you rise up. And we have several of the players, Carlo and McAvoy and Kevin Miller coming back on board. But obviously Grizz has been in situations, and Jeremy Lauzon and Moore and John Moore and Jacob Zaboral, who's looking for an opportunity to break through at the National Hockey League level. So, the players we have on our roster are what they are. The competition will begin, and there are no guarantees, and we understand that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Kevin Dupont, go ahead. Fudo Shinzawa, you'll be on deck.
Thanks, Don. Can you give a little more detail about what you would have envisioned here for Z's playing time had he stayed? And again, I know this had to be augmented by working new guys in, but sort of what would have been the ideal world if he had stayed in terms of minutes, role, profile?
Kevin, we did not put any parameters on. I think most people, that have ever been around me understand how much I hate to lose and how much I covet winning. And we're going to ice the best team we possibly can each and every night. The coach has his decisions that he wants to make. We looked at what the potential schedule might look at. We looked at an opportunity to expose some of our younger players to minutes and situations. So we didn't carve out in stone. We just laid out in a forthright manner, in a clear, concise, hopefully communicative manner, that we may, experiment in some of these situations where it has not been possible with Zdeno occupying all of those minutes in years past, and doing it in a remarkable fashion. So again, there's some exposure associated with that. We looked at it from an integrated aspect to blend those situations together, but we wanted to be clear and concise going into it, that's what our intention, our hope was. But also with a clear intention that we were going to ice the absolute best team we could with the expectations to win.
That sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that you're telling a player that's had that many minutes that there are some nights he's just not going to play. Is that fair?
Again, I'm not privy to any other team, the discussions that Zdeno and Matt have had. We were making no promises in terms of what our roster and lineup would be and what the minutes were every night. We never have. Situations that I've had discussions over the years where we were paring back some situational minutes with Zdeno and hard minutes and preservation, no different than days I've had talks with Patrice on and trying to spread that around and trying to be a complete hockey club and have depth in our lineup. Again, from a penalty killing situation. So I don't think any player is immune to that as they go through their career. It depends on what trajectory they're on, the start, the middle, the end. And we just wanted to look at it as pragmatically as we possibly could in an integrated fashion.
Okay, and one quick follow. This goes back decades, even before you arrived as a player. Back to when Harry was GM and Terry O'Reilly was on the roster. For the last 3 or 4 years, Terry was on the roster. Harry openly said he dreaded the day Terry would leave because he established such a team identity and work ethic and especially shift to shift effort and composure. I'm wondering if in these last 3 or 4 years, you've felt that same way about Chara, that ultimately it comes to the end for everybody. And this is what the guy has meant in terms of a team's character.
Well, Kevin, I think I said it best is the single most unrewarding phone call I had yesterday, to hear from Matt and speak with Zdeno in what his decision ended up being. I thought a little bit about this morning and you came to mind and thinking about Fran Rosa and him, allowing a young writer to potentially have the space that he's occupied for a long, long time. I mean, indelible marks made on sports and in society and impacting people that have the ability to do that. Zdeno, as I said before, and I'm quoting, he walks in no one's shadow, literally and figuratively. And it was extremely difficult to go through the whole process. As I said, this was extended over months, and we gave him all the latitude in the world to make what was ultimately his decision, he and his family's decision alone. And I wanted to make sure that we did that with the utmost respect that we possibly could as to what we could allow for Zdeno and what he's meant to the Boston Bruins organization.
Okay, I thank you, and Fran Rosa thanks you.
Kevin, we'll go next to Pluto Shinzawa. Go ahead, Pluto.
Don, Charlie, he's been your ice time leader the last couple of years, but to not have that security of Zdeno for the first time has got to be significant. So I'm wondering, how would you like Charlie to adjust to that? It's going to be his blue line in a sense. What kind of adjustments mentally do you think he has to make to be best prepared for whatever Bruce asks him to do?
Well, I think Charlie and Bruce, have had conversations with regard. We don't want Charlie to change the way he plays, regardless of who he's playing with. I do believe he plays, a lion's share of the minutes and has puck possession, leads our hockey club in those areas, and we don't want that to change. He shouldn't feel that he needs any more undue pressure on him to change. He just has to go out and play the way Charlie's capable of playing. We have to have the other people step into minutes and roles and carry the load. That's as simple as it is. One player is not going to get you to the promised land. It has to be the collection of the group, and our group of 6 on any particular night needs to transition the puck better. We defend very well as a group. Our forwards need to do a continuing job. We've hopefully added to the depth of our hockey club up front. Our goaltending is still where we feel is at an elite level, and the rest of the players have to assume their own roles. But Charlie really shouldn't have any increased or added pressure. He's been at that level, and we're going to continue down at that level. Probably introduce a little more of the power play opportunities to him, as Grizz will get opportunities and others will, and see how far he can run with it. And that's part of this exercise is how far the next young player, can and what level he can get to.
Thank you, Fluto. Before we go to Jimmy Murphy, just a reminder to media, if you no longer have a question, please go ahead and put your hand down. We'll go next to Jimmy Murphy, followed by Evan Marinofski. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Hey, Don, how you doing? Happy New Year.
You as well, Jimmy.
I'm just wondering, you were here when Bork left as a player. You were a teammate then, right? And I'm wondering, going through what you just went through in the last few months with Z, were you able to draw on that experience at all in the terms that you were right next to an icon, so to speak, that, it seemed like might be on the way out and then eventually was? Were you able to learn from that?
Obviously the players are similar in the fact that one's a Hall of Famer, one's short to be a Hall of Famer. Both carried themselves on the ice and off the ice at the highest of level and expected of their teammates, but most importantly expected of themselves. Both had a will and a courage beyond what most professional athletes and hockey players would hope to have. And, along those lines, you draw some of the analogies. And Raymond, at the situation in time, was exploring whether he should leave on his own account to really explore a team that might be in a better position to have a chance to win at that particular moment than where the Bruins were. Far different from where our hockey club is now and has been in the last few years, and Zdeno being a very, very big part of that. So different along those lines, Jimmy, but similar in the fact that both players making a decision to leave and what becomes of their legacy as a result. And I've been on record, Raymond's legacy has certainly not been tarnished by going to win Stanley Cup in Colorado, and Zdeno, is forever a member of the Boston Bruins. Will be enshrined in both the Hall of Fame and, my humble opinion, the Raptors amongst the greatest to ever wore a Boston Bruins uniform.
And just quickly, in terms of, is there a deadline? Will you guys be sending out a roster for camp soon, or?
Yeah, we have to have the deadline in before our players hit the ice in the physical.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Jimmy. We'll go next to Evan Marinofsky, followed by Joe Haggerty. Go ahead, Evan.
Don, when it comes to the left side, and Matt Grzelcyk sort of had the most service time for you guys, what are your sort of expectations for him now with Chara gone?
Well, it was part and parcel with the opportunity of the power play in situations of on the offensive blue line that Matt will obviously get an opportunity to explore and see where his game can to ascend to. Defensively, there'll be a little more responsibilities in matchup situations. Whether he can handle that increased role and beyond, whatever it is, 19, 20-minute threshold remains to be seen. And, we have to be careful there in terms of the breaking down, where players begin to break down, their inefficiency start to arise. We do monitor that with all of our players. But again, the opportunity is in front of Matt, and we'll see how far he can run with it. Not unlike the other players that we have in the organization and system.
Thanks, Evan. We'll go next to Joe Haggerty. Go ahead, Joe.
Hey, Donnie, Happy New Year.
You as well.
Just with Chara, how big a factor is the intimidation piece and missing that? I mean, you're talking about what arguably was the most feared player in the league over the last probably 10, 15 years. Obviously, he picked his spots showing it because he was so important to the team. He wasn't running around all the time, but just missing that sort of presence, that's hard to manufacture, hard to replace. How big a factor is that going to be, that missing piece for next year?
Well, at 6'9" and 250, it's fairly unique to our sport. So I'm not going to downplay it in any regard. He's been a physical force on and off the ice for our hockey club, and we'll have to have some players assume that mantle. It won't be overnight. It'll be by committee. We certainly have players that aspire to play more of a physical role in their nature and to get an opportunity to provide that to our hockey club. I think it's a part of the identity of our hockey club that needs to be continued, and I'm sure our players will address it in the manner that we need to. And we have to have that. As I said, we have to maintain that identity as a hockey club and being very, very difficult to play against.
Thanks, Donnie.
Thank you, Joe. We have time for a couple more. We'll go Mick Colaggio, and then we'll wrap it up with Steve Conroy. Go ahead, Mick. Got us, Mick? All right, we'll come back to you, Mick. Steve, why don't you go on ahead?
Hey, Donnie, I was just looking for an update on Marchand and Pasternak. Any better idea now when they might be available to you to play in a game?
Well, Marsh is doing really well. He's been on the ice pretty much every day. He will start to integrate into the main group of players from day one of training camp. And it's more of a volume and a comfort level for him. He's done a lot of work on and off the ice. He's finding his hands and his timing and such now, and the overall conditioning. And we'll be careful with it, but he's made a nice progression. Remains to be seen. Where we are as we move through camp and how he feels as a result of that, introducing contact and such. David is certainly a longer timeline. Return to play. He's back in the ice in a regular fashion. Won't initially integrate into the main practice groups as he increases the volume in his own return to play. So it's unlikely that he starts the opening couple of games, but we're going to monitor it week by week and continue to give you updates as they progress.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And we'll take our today's final question from Mick Colaggio. Mick, looks like you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that second chance. The whole present, win now, future for the franchise just took a huge swing with Krug and Chara in the same off season. First off, how deep into the season are the Bruins willing to go in this fact-finding mission that's about to commence before bringing in somebody from the outside in order to make sure you make the playoffs?
Well, there's a lot of ground to cover between there and the questions you've asked. That's a wide range. I don't know if you want to pare that down a little bit for me. Obviously, we're a team that's well positioned to be competitive in our division and get into the playoffs, and that's our expectation. And see where we go from there. It's an uncharted type of year that we're going to face, as was the return to play and going into a bubble environment. So if anybody has a clear-cut answer in terms of what to expect and what players may or may not remain healthy, good on them to have the foresight to be able to do that. We have to have the depth within the organization. I think you have to be strong, obviously, in all areas. I've made no bones that we have some exposure as introducing some younger players as we have planned to integrate and blend things. But our goaltending is in a great spot. And our forward group is. Now we got to be healthy and hopefully we move forward. But I don't think our expectations have changed at all.
Just if I can follow up real quick on that, the left side defense and the young players you want to really get a really good read on. You came into your career under very similar circumstances, highly successful club, and you were thrown into a situation there where you had to play up right away. And will you be peering down and really watching these guys closely and trying to think back and try to read their minds and sort of take their temperature as you go and look at them and trying to figure out, which ones are going to be able to emerge here?
I think it's merely about the coaching and the encouragement aspect of these players getting their bearings. and understanding the situations they're going to be put in. They have to rise up and take that challenge. You know, some of them have been sitting, percolating, as we say, in the development process and playing all those key integrated minutes in Providence and getting an opportunities up here, but being sheltered at times. And they're hopefully ready to sort of take that ball and run with it. Again, it's no different than when Brandon Carlo came on the scene. We did not come in with the expectations that he was going to play with Zdeno in the top pair. He just emerged to be able to do that. We saw great signs when he first came in to be able to skate and cover ice. Charlie McAvoy went down and played 4 to 6 games in Providence, and we ran into injury problems and threw him into our lineup. I think at some point in time, unless you're just an heir apparent, depending on your profile leading up to it, that most players have to get integrated at some point in time in the National Hockey League, gain their footing and move forward. And I think we're in a position, especially as our right side is constituted, have the experience that they have and the minutes that they have previously played to be able to hopefully counterbalance that. And Kevin Miller's a part of that. Connor Clifton's a part of that. And these guys have all played, yeoman minutes in situations, and they're excited for the opportunity moving forward.
And Miller played a little bit left side for Claude, and then Bruce at the beginning, at least, before the knee came into it. Is that a possibility too of kind of putting him over there in situations?
Oh yeah, I mean certainly penalty killing situations. If it's maybe he and Brandon. I mean, those are up to Bruce and Kevin and Joe as they see the penalty killing units roll out there. Again, Jeremy Lauzon's been a penalty killer at all levels of hockey. He's going to go step into that type of role. Grizz has picked up the second half of PK minutes. Again, these are unique situations because we have had a player for the yeoman part of 14 years that has been in those situations. So you're right. We have to introduce some of those players into those situations. And Kevin sliding over periodically. I don't think he'll start there. Getting his comfort level back on the right side, but for penalty killing situations, and Connor Clifton has done that as well. Jeremy was actually playing on his offside for the most part because we didn't have any spot on the left side to integrate him. He'll be more comfortable on his strong side, and we move forward. John Moore's a part of that. Zabora's a part of that. We're back in Ironwood. So again, we understand. I don't think we've ever not acknowledged that we have some players that we would like to try and integrate and see whether or not they can handle things. And if not, then we may have to pivot and move in another direction.